Proverbs 14, we're going to see what we can receive from the first 12 verses. I'm taking the title of this lesson, What Seems Right May Not Be, and that really is what's going to guide us through the lesson, but I'm taking that lesson from the last verse, verse 12. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And that is repeated verbatim in chapter 16 and verse 25. I won't read it because it says exactly the same thing. So twice you have that statement. The word right is literally straight. It's also translated upright. It's used numerous times in the book of Proverbs, actually. Back in chapter 12 and verse 15, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes. That's kind of the idea here. The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. And the point here is that simply because one's way is straight or smooth, seems right, doesn't mean it is. Now, before we had GPS, now I don't even think about north, south, east, west. I just plug it in and go. But before we had that, and maybe you can relate if you're older. You younger folks can't relate to this. But, there were times where I thought I was going east when I was really going west, or thought I was going north when I was really going south. I don't know if you ever had that experience, but where just sort of you're, discombobulated, your equilibrium's off, whatever, your sense of direction just wasn't there, but you were sure you were going in the right direction until you ended up in New Mexico when you should have taken a turn to go to Mexico. I did that one time. And had to backtrack all the way back and then make another turn. I thought I was going right. Seemed right. Directionally challenged. One thing that struck me this week, I was meditating on these verses and I looked up and saw the sun rising, and immediately I knew east. I knew where east was. The sun always sets your direction right. You getting the point? The Son of Righteousness always sets your direction right. And we need to get our eyes upon Him so that we know the direction that we should go and whether our way really is right. So just because your way seems right doesn't make it right, and it doesn't mean it will end well for you, either in a temporal way and even more severe in an eternal way. It isn't sufficient that it seems right. Someone wrote, "The way of death is rarely clearly marked." Sounds like a proverb, doesn't it? The way of death is rarely clearly marked. So we need help. It's not sufficient to feel like you're on the right path. So we need the wisdom of Christ applied by the Holy Spirit to guide us. And that's where the Proverbs come in. Now, there are other scriptures, of course, but the Proverbs teach us to distinguish between what seems right and what is right. And that's the theme of the lesson here. What seems right and what is right. Verse 1, the contrast is really quite obvious here. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. Everybody pretty much can understand the language of that verse. But how the wise woman builds her house and the foolish pulls it down may not be so clear. And there are many things that have been suggested to fill in the blanks. And I'm not going to go into all of that. I think the key, as I meditated on this verse, I think the key is her hands. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. Of course, house here is her family, the environment of her dwelling, her household, and the woman is particularly in view. A man usually is the one that's going to build a structural house, that is, framing it, pouring the concrete, framing it, putting the roof on, etc., etc. A woman doesn't usually involve herself in that, but a woman does involve herself in building the house, which is her household, her dwelling, her domain. That's the idea here. And the wise woman builds it up. The foolish pulls it down with her hands. Her hands, and I'm not taking a lot of time on this. I know that as you're listening, you're thinking a lot of things can be said, and I know that. But the goal isn't to say everything that can be said. It's just to give you some thoughts as we work through each of these proverbs. But her hands represent her efforts that are not according to wisdom, but according to what seems right to her. Now, she's not necessarily lazy. I read, some commentators, well, she's lazy. I don't see it that way. I don't think that's the point. It could be. She's not necessarily, though, lazy or indifferent. She doesn't necessarily ignore her family, or she's not necessarily distracted with outside activity. All of those things could play into a foolish woman pulling down her house with her hands. But the problem, if I could suggest this, with the foolish woman is she's not establishing her home according to wisdom. In other words, she's not a fountain of life, if I can connect with last week's lesson from chapter 13. And that is emphasized all throughout the Proverbs, really. Her words lack grace. She's critical. She's overbearing. She's contentious. A foolish woman with her hands pulls the house down. She thinks she's right as she enforces rules without relating with kindness and patience. A rule-oriented household. The aroma of Christ is not filling the home. There's no peace, there's no joy, but there's tension. There's a caustic environment. This is a foolish woman pulling down her house. And if we took time, we could go to the New Testament and address those scriptures which speak of a woman with a meek and quiet spirit, a woman who is functioning with a spirit that is building up her house, not tearing it down. Or Proverbs 31, which we're going to get to eventually, which really elaborates on this. The wise woman builds her house. She reflects the Spirit of Christ, a gracious, meek, and quiet spirit. Her family benefits from her care and her love. They don't feel dominated or under constant legalistic scrutiny of a self-righteous spirit. That's the hands, the flesh, the hands, doing what seems right to me approach, rather than the leading of the family, children, being that influence in the home toward wisdom, toward Christ. The wise woman is building up her house with words of wisdom and kindness. I took that from Proverbs 31. Y'all remember that? I flip over there, I guess, and read it. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. Not just the laws of rules, but the law of kindness. She's influencing her home in that sort of way. including correction, as she disciplines in love. So let me just give this closing thought here on verse 1. Sisters, and I hope this spreads to all the sisters who aren't even in here right now, but you have families. There is no more important sphere of life for you than the one God has given you in your home. That is the number one sphere that God has given. God's given it to you. To build your house, not pull it down with your own hands. Verse 2. He who walks in his uprightness fears the Lord, but he who is perverse in his ways despises him. This could connect with verse 1, but it connects with the theme of doing that which is right in your own eyes. Our relationship and attitude to the Lord is evidenced by our lives. I mean, you really do know what a person's attitude is toward the Lord by simply observing their lives. Are you observing your own life? The direction of your own life. Do you see that? He who walks in his uprightness fears the Lord. He who is perverse in his ways despises him. The evidence of one who fears the Lord, you don't have to say it, I fear the Lord. It's evident. He walks in his uprightness. In other words, the way I hear that is he's living out who he is. That there's an uprightness that's coming from inside of him, given to him, established within him. He's living it out. In other words, you're not doing what merely seems right to you. Your heart is toward God. It's out of that relationship to God that you're living life. You're living His way. You fear the Lord. He matters most to you. I think that's a summary thought of fearing the Lord. There are other things that can be said that I'll not get into this morning, but He matters most to you. More than anything else, more than anyone else. You're drawn to Him. When you fear the Lord with a proper fear, you're drawn to Him above everyone and everything else. But the evidence of one who despises the Lord, what's the evidence of one who despises the Lord? According to Proverbs 14:2, he's perverse. Perverse in his ways. He follows his own lusts. He does his own thing. He does not follow that which is right before God and doesn't really care. This is the man who does what's right in his own eyes. There's no fear of God before his eyes. Now, it's a fact. Conduct and your attitude toward God are inseparable. Sometimes we like to separate the two, but you can't separate conduct and attitude toward God. Your attitude toward God will affect your conduct. But I would say this, your conduct is not what affects your attitude toward God. It's the other way around. It's your attitude toward God that affects your conduct. But you can't separate the two. You will live according to your relationship with God one way or other. You'll either fear Him or despise Him. There's no middle ground. Jesus taught us this, didn't He? Matthew 6, verse 24, no one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other. Do you hear a relationship there, an attitude there? Or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. He who is perverse in his ways despises him. You cannot serve God and mammon. Verse 3. In the mouth of a fool is a rod of pride, but the lips of the wise will preserve them. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Over and over, we're encouraged and warned regarding our words, aren't we? And our concern, though, must begin before the words come out. It's not after they come out. Sometimes we have to deal with that. You know, we have to ask forgiveness. We have to apologize. But sometimes the gate doesn't stay shut. That's why it's important to deal with what's before the gate. And you notice, he says, in the mouth of a fool is a rod of pride. The word rod here is used only one other time in all of the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for rod, and it's in Isaiah chapter 11 when it talks of the rod from the stem of Jesse, the rod, the growth. It's talking about something which is growing, it's coming forth. That's the idea of this word. It's not the same as the rod back in the previous, in chapter 13, verse 24. It's not the same rod. Here the idea is the picture is there's something growing inside of you. It comes from within you. It comes out through the words. And what it does is it hurts others. And if you want to think of a rod that way, a stem, it's something that is hurtful, harmful. Not only to others, but to one's own self. In the mouth of a fool is a rod of pride. It comes out. It doesn't stay in. Pride fuels the expression of words that seem right to you, connecting with our theme. But they're harmful. They're not helpful. We need to identify that. But the lips of the wise will preserve them. The wise will guard his heart and won't allow pride to govern his speech. And so preserving himself and others, the lips of the wise will preserve them. The idea of preserve there is to guard, to protect others as well as himself. Wisdom restrains the urge to say what may seem right, but is actually hurtful. Have you ever caught yourself? Have you ever caught yourself? Something's rising up in you. You want to say it. But then you think, oh, wait a minute. Aren't you thankful when that happens? When it doesn't come out. It's when it comes out, it's like, oh. And you know, when you live with somebody, your husband and wife, you're living in the same house, it's really, that's where we're tested probably more than anywhere else. Because we're always together. Sometimes we let our guard down. Or let our guards down. We're not guarding, we're not preserving. The lips of the wise will preserve them. We're guarding. But the mouth of a fool is a rod of pride. Grows, it goes, it doesn't, it's not stopped. Don't follow it. Guard against it. Verse 4, where no oxen are, the trough is clean, the crib, trough, but much increase comes by the strength of an ox. It may seem right to avoid the mess. Okay, those are the way that seems right to a man. It may seem right to avoid the mess that an oxen creates. But if there's no mess, there's no harvest. If there's no oxen, there's no production. And if you got oxen, you got to feed them. And what do you feed them in? A trough. Or it could be the place it lives, but the idea here is that, and so you've got to put something there, and they are messy. Avery could talk to us about pigs, not oxen. But in this day, agriculturally, oxen were critical to life. And yeah, there are problems associated with oxen. But if you don't have oxen, you're not going to have production. You're not going to have what you need. But much increase comes by the strength of an ox. I think we get the idea, don't we? Charles Bridges actually made this observation. God ordinarily works through means, not miracles. So you can say, I don't need an oxen. God's just going to provide. God says, no, you do need an oxen. That's a means for production. And so feed the oxen. Get an oxen. Feed it. And put up with the mess that an oxen is going to create because of the increase, the production because of what you're going to get from it. So the point is fruitfulness, materially or spiritually. You can apply this materially or spiritually. But the fruitfulness often requires inconvenience, effort, and even a mess. Are you thinking right now about ways that you could apply this? Go ahead, John. True. That's a good example. Somebody else. There's others. There's plenty of examples here. Does something come to your mind?
Diversity encouraged.
Yes.
Especially when they're outnumbered by the young children.
Yeah.
The house isn't as clean as it should be.
I want a clean house.
Perfect as it
I don't
should
want
be.
my children. Yeah.
That's okay.
By the way, huh?
I mean, the kids come over. What's the first thing they do? Grandparents, what is the first thing kids do? Hopefully you have a toy box for them or something for them. That's immediately they go there and toys are everywhere. I see them grabbing the marble box. I never get done here if I go on and on about this, but I see them grab the marble box and I want to say, no, don't take the marble box now, because I know what's going to happen. The marbles are going to go everywhere, you know. Maybe that's not exactly what's being said here, but there's an application to it, isn't there? To that. Anybody else? What about relationships? Do relationships sometimes get messy? You know, sometimes we can actually say, you know what, I'm tired of it. I don't want to deal with another relationship because I've had so many bad relationships. I'm done. I'm finished. I want a neat, clean life. I'm not gonna take the chance of messiness. Isn't there an application there? But there is increase when we give ourselves to one another, even though there's some messiness that comes from it. Marriage relationships, work. It's already, John mentioned work. There's ministry. Ministry's hard. Ministry is hard. Spiritual growth. All of this requires effort. And it's not always neat and clean. Sometimes the way to progress, the way to increase is through some mess. And I think that's one of the points that's being made here. Verse 5, we don't have to spend much time on this because we've dealt with it already. We'll deal with it again. This is a theme in Proverbs. A faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness will utter lies. Maybe just one spiritual point here would be this: let us always be true witnesses of Jesus Christ. Faithful witnesses, not false witnesses, not saying one thing, doing another, or misrepresenting Jesus Christ in any way. That would be a spiritual application. But a faithful witness doesn't lie. And as I said when I dealt with chapter 12, because this concept was there, that's the kind of witness we want to be in life, not just in relationship to our witness unto Christ, but any area of life where we're speaking, we want to be men and women of truth. Now, verses 6 through 8 kind of go together. A scoffer seeks wisdom and does not find it, but knowledge is easy to him who understands. Go from the presence of a foolish man when you do not perceive in him the lips of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. So that idea of knowledge and understanding is in each of those verses. They form kind of a unit. A scoffer. That, if you look up the word scoffer, you're going to see you're going to find the idea of arrogance, of pride. And a scoffer is one who is proud and thinks his way is right. There's a way that seems right to a man. And this is true of a scoffer. He's a person that's not teachable. But the humble spirit is open to receive instruction, and thus he finds knowledge easy. That's the principle here. I believe what is being expressed here, if we could find a New Testament parallel, it would perhaps be this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 14 and 15, but the natural man does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him. This is the scoffer. They're foolishness to him. Nor can he know them. He can't understand, because they are spiritually discerned. It's not that he's stupid. It's not that he doesn't understand language. It's not that he can't define terms. He just doesn't see the wisdom in that which God says. But he who is spiritual judges all things, yet he himself is rightly judged by no one. Back in chapter 1 of 1 Corinthians and verses 20 and 21, where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer, the debater of this age? This is the scoffer. Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through wisdom did not know God, it pleased God through the foolishness of the message preached, the foolishness of preaching, the message preached to save those who believe. But those who are scoffers, who are really full of themselves, the scoffer may ask questions. The Proverbs says a scoffer seeks wisdom and doesn't find it. Why doesn't he find it? He's not sincere. He isn't really seeking the truth, and so he doesn't find wisdom. The proud scoffer rejects the wisdom of God. And so you come along with the wisdom of God, and it doesn't satisfy, it doesn't fit, doesn't make sense. But knowledge is easy to him who understands, the one who has the Spirit of God. A scoffer objects to explanation of truth. When I read this, I thought about what Paul said in 2 Timothy, speaking of those who are ever learning, but never coming to a knowledge of the truth. The truth is elusive. And so we live in an age like that where you can't even speak of anything as being actual truth, because it's so fluid. It all depends on your generation. It all depends on what people think. It's that which seems right to a man. To a man. Not listening to God. Now, it's not foolish to ask questions. It's not foolish to have doubts. It's foolish to be so resistant that no answer satisfies, and refuse to receive by faith what is revealed in truth. Don't go there. Verse 7 and 8. So as we are engaging with the world, family, whoever, go from the presence of a foolish man when you do not perceive in him the lips of knowledge. So the theme of understanding and the pursuit of it here continues. At some point, you've got to listen. At some point, you've got to discern when the person you're listening to is not really open to what is truth. You've got to sense when they're negatively affecting your own mind. Have you found that to be true when you're listening to whatever, a podcast, or listening to, we have whatever, Instagram or YouTube or whatever it is. Have you found that to be true, that when you're listening, you're finding yourself being sent into a place of turmoil in your spirit? You're not being helped at all toward Christ, toward truth, toward wisdom. Or maybe it is that you're communicating with somebody face to face. Well, that's a time to walk away. The instruction of wisdom is go from the presence of a foolish man. Go from him. Don't remain around someone whose influence continually distracts you from the Lord and from His wisdom. When you don't perceive, that word "in him" is in italics. It's actually when you do not perceive the lips of knowledge. In other words, what's coming out of his mouth. You don't perceive that it fits what you understand from the light of God's Word. This kind of connects with what we saw back in chapter 12 and verse 26. The righteous should choose his friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. And then verse 8. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. As I was putting these together, the prudent are not simply following what seems right. Emphasis on seems. Do you see that? The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way. He's not deceived. He knows the path that he should take. He understands the way that he is going. And he is staying on course, undistracted and undeterred. He's not guessing. He's not wondering where this way is leading. Because he's not depending upon the philosophies of men or his own philosophy. There is a way that seems right to a man. But the end. And we don't always know the end, do we? We don't know. If you pick a path, you don't know the end until you get to the end. But isn't it good when you have somebody who does know the end and he's telling you, this is the way. This is the way. I know where the end. I know where this is going to lead. And where are you going to find that? And so we don't have to guess when you're walking in the light. You don't have to guess. You know, you're sure. So you have that well-known proverb, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And lean not on your own understanding. There's a way that seems right to a man, your own understanding. But in all your ways acknowledge Him. You understand your way because you understand Him and you understand the way that He is leading. He shall direct your paths. By the way, the idea there isn't that you just set out on a journey and He's going to robotically guide you. That's not the idea. The idea is if you're acknowledging Him, this is kind of the fear of the Lord. You're acknowledging Him and He's showing you. He's directing you. He's going to direct your paths. The word direct there is the word straight. It's going to be a straight path if you're following Him. So it matters to the prudent what way they take. It matters to you. It matters. I want to make sure that I'm on His way. So Paul says in Ephesians 5:17, therefore do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. It's revealed to us. And pray for spiritual understanding, Colossians 1, 9 and 10. But you ask a fool why he's doing what he's doing or going where he's going, he doesn't know. The folly of fools is he's deceived. It's deceit. No. Wisdom, the wise man wants to know. And so walk in the light that God has given, not just what seems right to you. Verse 9, fools mock at sin, but among the upright there is favor. Fools treat moral failure like a joke or a game. All that matters to them is that it seems right, not is it right. And whatever path they choose, whatever choice they make, it's their choice, it's their path, and they really don't care beyond themselves. They mock the very concept of personal guilt. Fools mock at sin. That word sin there, if you have a margin in your Bible, probably, or maybe some of your translations may say guilt. It's the idea of a guilt offering. That's the idea here. Fools mock at that. You don't need that. That's the whole idea. You don't need to deal with that. You don't need to feel any obligation. You don't need to feel any obligation to apologize, to repair harm, or fix what you broke. It doesn't matter. Fools mock at sin. And of course, this could be elaborated upon because we know that that's exactly why Christ came with the ultimate guilt offering, right? But wrongdoing for the fool is treated as trivial. The question is, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Not really concerned about what is truly right. But the upright are different. The upright seek good, or the idea of that word favor is goodwill. Goodwill. It can be favor with God or favor with man. You see that in Luke chapter, 2, where Jesus grew in favor with God and with men. Favor. Among the upright, there is favor. The idea here is that the upright want to make amends for wrong. They care about any breach of relationship with God or man, and therefore they seek favor. They seek goodwill. They don't brush off offenses, but seek to restore or make restitution. Fools mock at sin. Don't be a fool. Don't follow the path of a fool. Sometimes believers can be foolish, or we can resemble the fool even if we're not fools at heart. But we should be manifesting an upright heart. He who walks in his uprightness fears the Lord. Back to verse 2. But among the upright there is favor. A guy named Bruce Waltke, he's got a huge commentary on Proverbs. He said this, summarized it. Upright people seek to steer clear of guilt-incurring situations. But if they commit wrong, they count on Christ's sacrifice, the guilt offering, Christ's sacrifice, and they make appropriate restitution for their victims. So that's both. You're dealing with God, you're dealing with man. God's already dealt with that end of sin. He gave His only begotten Son. But we are relating to one another, and we need to seek favor. Verse 10, the heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its joy. Let me just summarize this quickly. No one can truly understand the deepest feelings of another. I think that's a sort of a core idea here. No one really understands you. Not really. We're truly individual in this. Whether it be our sorrows or our griefs or bitterness, as the word here is, or joy, either way, it's hard. Sometimes it's even hard to express it, isn't it? What's going on inside of us. Though we may sympathize at some level, and I think we should try to sympathize. Who can know the spirit of man but a man's own spirit? So no one can really know the depths of sorrow or joy going on in another's heart. And I don't think we should pretend to know. Sometimes we say, I know exactly how you feel. No, you don't. If I can be so brash as to say, well, maybe I won't be so brash. I'll just say it this way. That's not a good comment to make. I know exactly how you feel. Now you can say, I think I might know something of how you feel. That's a good statement to make. But I know exactly how you feel. And you can even say, I feel for you. Right? I feel for you. Because it may, we can say, I know exactly how you feel, and that person's thinking, how do you know exactly how I feel? I don't even know exactly how I feel. I'm confused. I'm disturbed. There's something going on in me. The heart knows its own bitterness, but to express it, a stranger does not share its joy. So, don't be surprised if others fall short in identifying with you. I think that's a good takeaway from here. Sometimes we get into our little pity sessions and nobody understands me. Well, no, it's probably true. Nobody really does understand you completely. Check that. There is somebody who fully understands you. Who is it? Jesus Christ. Oh, He does. He sympathizes with us. He knows what's going on. He knows your heart, and we can go to Him. We can go to Him with the feelings of our infirmities, and we can even say, I don't fully grasp what's going on here, but I know you know. Help me, even though no one else may understand. That's why we need It's true. That's why we need Holy Spirit guided wisdom in our dealings with one another. It's true. Know when to speak, when not to speak. Yeah, exactly. And when we do speak, only what is fitting. True. Verses 11 and 12. I got to wrap it up. So, the house of the wicked will be overthrown. This is sort of a summary conclusion that goes with verse 12. But the tent of the upright will flourish. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. The house of the wicked will be overthrown. Its end is the way of death, but the tent of the upright will flourish. A house certainly appears more permanent and more desirable than a nomadic tent. And that word tent there, that's what it's referring to. But the tent of the upright, it's this movable dwelling. And you would think if I had to pick between the two, which would you rather live in? Of course, a house rather than a tent. But don't be deceived. That's the point. The house of the wicked will be overthrown. Don't be deceived. The tent of the upright will flourish. What really matters is not the size or the appearance of your temporal dwelling, but the nature of your life affected by your relationship with the Lord. That's what matters. And there's two different ends. One is overthrown, one flourishes. So, what looks best in the moment as you are working through life? What looks best in the moment may not lead to what is best in the end, temporally or eternally. Listen to wisdom. Listen to Christ. Don't follow what merely seems right to you, but what is right in the light of Christ, our wisdom. Yeah.
Two places in Judges.
In those days, there were no kings in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes.
Yeah. That's the point. And read Judges. That's probably, for me, it's one of the most difficult books in the Bible to read, especially the latter part of it. I just kind of wow. And it's a fruit of that. Doing what's right in our own right. No good place to go there. All right. So, Father, we now yield this all to you and ask that you would make